And calling People versus Angel Ramos on behalf of the people.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Alexander Curry on behalf of the people, P84950.
And on behalf of Mr. Ramos.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. James Humphreys, P38930 on behalf of the defendant.
And this matter is set for an exam today. Are the people ready to proceed?
People are ready to proceed, Your Honor.
Go ahead and call your first witness.
Yes, Judge. The people call Mr. Trent Jones to the stand.
And Mr. Jones, can you raise your right hand? Solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, so help you God? I
do, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Curry. And we also have the detective on this case, Dale Harrison, from Van Buren Township. And Mr. Humphreys, you consented to have this exam by Zoom, is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Perfect. All right, go ahead, Mr. Curry.
Thank you, Judge. Would you please state your name for the record?
Trent Stephen Jones.
And Mr. Jones, I'd like to direct your attention to December the 22nd, 2020. Were you trying to sell anything at that time?
Yes, sir. I was trying to sell a Nintendo Switch.
And
can you hold on just a second? Oh, give it just a second, Mr. Curry. Hang on 1 minute.
No problem, Judge.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, go ahead, Mr. Curry. I apologize.
No worries, Judge. All right, Mr. Jones. So in December 22nd of 2020, you were trying to sell your Nintendo Switch. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. With a bunch of games on them.
Do you recall how many games you're trying to sell?
They were digital, so I believe there was about 4 or 5.
And Mr. Jones, how were you going about trying to sell this Nintendo Switch?
So I had contacted my girlfriend's grandma because she said she wanted to help me sell it. And I think it was through Facebook Messenger that it was being, passed back and forth information-wise.
So you were using Facebook Live, or excuse me, not Facebook Live, a Facebook Marketplace to try and sell this Nintendo Switch?
Yes, sir.
And without telling me what anyone said, Mr. Jones, did you receive a response on anyone interested in that Nintendo Switch?
On a few different apps, yes, sir.
Okay. And did anyone express interest in buying this Nintendo Switch?
Yes, sir.
And did you eventually exchange text messages with someone who wanted to come buy your Nintendo Switch?
Yes, sir.
And did you tell them to meet you somewhere?
No, sir. Not anybody else besides her.
Well, anyone in particular?
Yes.
Okay. And did you tell them to go to 6096 Victoria Street?
Yes, sir.
And what is that address to you?
A few months ago, we were living in a trailer home with my grandma. And it's just a trailer that we were temporarily living in.
Okay. And is that in Van Buren Township?
Yes, sir.
Is that in Wayne County?
Yes, sir.
And did someone eventually arrive at that location on December 22nd to purchase the Nintendo Switch?
Yes, sir.
And how did that person arrive?
They arrived through vehicle, and they arrived in the driveway.
I'm sorry, they arrived in the driveway, did you say?
Yeah, like right next to the driveway.
Okay, go ahead.
And Mr. Jones, how many people were in that vehicle that arrived?
2, sir.
And did anyone eventually get out and talk to you?
No, sir.
Or did they get out of the car?
Out of the vehicle.
Oh, you went up to the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you talk to anyone in the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And which person in the vehicle did you talk to?
I talked to the passenger, sir.
And were you closest to the passenger?
Yes, sir.
And is the passenger on Zoom court today? Can you identify that person?
Currently, I don't know how to make it to where I see everyone. I just see whoever's talking because I'm on my phone right now.
Okay.
But I believe I did see him for a split second.
Mr. Jones, if you hit, I believe on your phone, if you hit gallery view, you'll be able to see everyone.
Can he describe the person he's seen before?
Mr. Ramos.
Like what?
Mr. Ramos,
Mr. Ramos, please don't speak.
don't talk.
You got your attorney here for you. Please don't speak.
No, he's supposed to ask to describe me. Of course, he's going to say, yes, that's him.
Mr. Ramos, just be quiet, okay? Just sit there.
Mr. Jones, did you hit gallery view? Can you see everyone?
I cannot find it, sir.
Okay, well, while anyone was talking, did you see anyone pop up on your screen?
Yes, sir.
Did you see the individual in the passenger seat of that vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall what that, so on Zoom court today, do you recall what that person who was just speaking was wearing?
A red jacket, I believe.
And does he have a particular hairstyle?
Dreads.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant?
For purposes of exam only, Mr. Humphreys.
I
No,
understand.
Your Honor, that's not quite enough because based on what he wrote, what was written in the report, this was 9:25 at night. The person that he says
You're going to have an opportunity to cross-examine him. He just made an identification. I can't change what he said, but you can cross-examine him on that if you want.
All right.
Thank you,
Go
Judge.
ahead, Mr. Curry.
Thank you, Judge. And Mr. Jones, upon you speaking with the defendant, the passenger of that vehicle, what happened next?
We chatted for a few, and unfortunately, when I was trying to sell the Switch, it had died right before I had shown them it. And I believe the driver asked to see it because it was dead. And I mean, I would understand why they wouldn't trust me for a few. So I handed it over, and they were looking at it. The driver was suspicious. The passenger was, I believe, all right with it. And as the passenger was about to hand me the money, the driver drove off.
Did he have the Nintendo Switch with him?
Yes, sir.
And did you give him permission to take that Nintendo Switch?
Yes, sir.
You gave him permission to take the Switch away from you?
No, not like away from me, but to show him, yes, to make sure that it's real, it wasn't broken.
But he didn't have permission to drive away with it at that time?
No, sir.
And had he given you any money for the Nintendo Switch at that time?
He was in the motion of handing it to me outside of the window, and then whoever the driver was went off with it.
Did you ever receive the money for that Nintendo Switch?
No, sir.
Do you have that Nintendo Switch today?
No, sir.
Okay, wait a second. Wait a second. So you're telling me that if for purposes of this conversation, or this testimony, that the passenger, which you identified to the prosecutor as Mr. Ramos, he was the passenger. Am I correct?
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
Your Honor.
and he was trying to hand you money, and the driver drove off.
Yes, Your Honor. He was in the action of handing me.
I understand that he was in the action of trying to pay you. Mr. Curry,
Yes, Judge?
do I have to explain to you that you have a problem?
Yes, Judge. No, you don't need to explain.
And
anything.
Mr. Humphreys? He doesn't want to say anything. I mean, what exactly, Mr. Curry, are you suggesting that Mr. Ramos did wrong?
Well, Judge,
He didn't lean over and throw the brake when the driver was trying to drive away?
Well, Judge, that was my questioning, my line of questioning after I asked about driving away. Mr. Jones didn't get the Switch back, nor was he ever paid for it. So,
but his testimony is that Mr. Ramos tried to pay him for it, and the driver drove away. So you don't know what happened afterwards if Mr. Ramos pulled over on this, not that I'm making your argument for you, Mr. Humphreys, but humor me. That he didn't just say, hey, I'm out of here, you know, and you don't know. I mean, the driver is the one. I don't know how you establish probable cause.
I mean, I established probable cause, Judge, by the fact that there was no effort to give the Nintendo Switch back to Mr. Jones. He testified that he didn't get the Nintendo Switch back, nor did he receive any money for the Nintendo.
Mr. Humphreys, well, do you want to wrap? You can wrap up with Mr. Jones, and then Mr. Humphreys can make the argument.
Okay. No further questions at this time, Judge.
Mr. Humphreys.
Your Honor, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Jones, how did you describe the person that was in the passenger seat to the police?
I believe he had a tattoo on his neck. I can't recall what it was, but I remember something along the lines of a broken heart. I remember he had a mask just under his chin, or not under his chin, on his chin. He did have dreads. I don't remember what exactly he was wearing, but
All right.
he also had a face tattoo, like under one of his eyes. I can't remember which eye. I think it was his right eye, I believe.
Okay. And do you remember giving a statement to the police?
Yes, sir.
And the only thing that you gave them a description of was a black male and that he had a tattoo someplace. You didn't mention anything about the dreads.
Yes, sir. However, I did have his Facebook account. So right after having stolen the Switch, I went to his Facebook account and I correctly identified him.
May I
Mr.
say
Ramos,
something?
do not, no, you cannot say anything.
When you voluntarily gave the gaming equipment to the person that was in the passenger seat, correct?
They asked to see if it would charge. I had the charger with them as well, along with everything else, like accessory wise, just in case they needed to see it, if it would charge. So they used their car to charge it, and then that's kind of where it started, I guess.
Correct, but you gave it to them freely. They didn't take it from you. They didn't buffalo you and take it from you.
No, but
You gave it to them, and then this person that was in the passenger seat, you indicated made an effort to pay you. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that the only reason that you did not take the money was because the car left, of which he was just the passenger. Correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. When you got back to quote Facebook and you looked up this person, did you reach out to him?
I didn't want to interfere with anything. I believe my dad told me not to interfere. However,
okay. Question is really simple. When you got back, you went in the house, because you're at your house, you went in the house and you went back on Facebook and you saw it. And I'm saying the person that you saw in the Facebook post, did you make contact with that person?
No, sir.
Did you have a phone number or any form of manner to contact the person?
Yes, sir. Can I just say though that
there's no
I
question.
believe my phone was used. I'm sorry.
There's no question on the table, sir. I'm sorry. And at 9:25 at night in December, it was dark.
Yes, sir.
Did the dome light inside come on?
Are those the
Dome light inside of the car? Did
I
any
don't
of those
believe so.
lights come on?
I don't believe so. There
All right.
was some form of lighting.
Excuse me?
There was some form of lighting.
Okay, what form was it?
I don't know, sir. It's hard to remember.
Did you have a porch light on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was the car close proximity to the porch?
Relatively, yes, sir.
Have nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Curry?
Yes, Judge, very briefly, if I may.
Yep.
Mr. Jones, defense counsel asked you a few questions about when you handed the switch to the occupants of the vehicle. When you were, before the car drove away, and when the defendant was trying to hand you the money, did he motion with his hand anywhere before the car drove away?
No, sir.
No, sir? Okay. No further questions, Judge.
Anything else, Mr. Humphreys?
No, Your Honor.
Motion, Mr. Curry?
Yes, Judge, the people would move for a bind over at this time. I think we heard from a pretty credible witness based on what he said and also what he didn't testify, he didn't remember. So I think we have a very credible witness here, Judge. But I think the point that Your Honor brought up earlier when she was questioning me, when you were questioning me, excuse me, about the potential problem, I think, Judge, a person who was not intending to, deprive Mr. Jones of the Nintendo Switch or of the Nintendo Switch without paying for it would have either A, stopped the car and done something about that at that juncture, or they had, the defendant, who Mr. Jones was able to positively identify, had his contact information, Judge. He could have at any time given the Switch back. Mr. Jones testified he still doesn't have the Nintendo Switch back, and he still doesn't have the requisite value of that Nintendo Switch, as was agreed upon, Judge. So for those reasons, Judge, the people would ask for a bind over.
Mr. Humphreys?
Yes, Your Honor. Directly to the point, this gentleman, Mr. Jones, he gave a description in that he was able to see the gentleman that's in this picture here, but in his description that he gave close in time to the incident, the only thing he mentioned was that the gentleman had a tattoo on his face. That was it. He mentioned nothing about the dreadlocks, his hair, mask, anything. He mentioned anything about that. And so today it is convenient to come in, and because there's only the four of us who are people in the court.
No, I understand. I understand the identification issue, but he did indicate that he had identified him on a Facebook page, that he had reached out with them.
Okay.
Mr. Ramos, please don't raise your hand.
If you take the Facebook page, all right, then the testimony that he gave here was that he had a mask on, and that his mask was, I think he said, covering his chin or something to that effect. I mean, his identification of the person is very much skewed towards this person that's sitting here, because
no, I understand that, but my question is that he identified to the police department somebody by Facebook, and we didn't have Detective Harrison testify to the follow-up on how they got to Mr. Ramos, and maybe, Mr. Curry, that's what we need to do on the identification issue.
Yeah, Judge, I'm looking for, I don't see a Facebook post in the file. But I guess the people's contention at this time would be, Mr. Jones testified to his recollection of the events, testifies that the area by the car was sufficiently lit enough for him to see the individual, and he identified that person in court today, Judge. So I think for at least for the probable cause matter at hand, the people would contend that's sufficient.
That was just part one. Part two has to just go to, if there's been no proof that Mr. Ramos, the gentleman that's sitting here, that he did anything illegal. As the court pointed out, and as Mr. Jones indicated, Mr. Jones gave the passenger the equipment because it wasn't, quote, working, to be checked to see if it was going to be working.
My problem, Mr. Curry, although this doesn't help you, Mr. Humphreys, at the end of the day, my problem is a concern that maybe this was charged wrong. I mean, larceny is that you take property with the intent to steal. And so taking property from another, and everything that Mr. Jones said is that he handed the property to Mr. Ramos and that Mr. Ramos was attempting to pay him. Now, if he didn't return it, that may be a conversion charge, which may be the more appropriate charge against Mr. Ramos. But a larceny from a person means that you take property with the intent. And from Mr. Jones's testimony, there isn't anything else that we have. There isn't an intent. I mean, he can't formulate the intent afterwards. That's conversion.
I understand, Judge. Would you consider an amendment to that charge?
What's the conversion statute?
I'd have to look it up on our PACC manual, Judge. I don't have the
Mr.
statute.
Humphreys, I mean, actually, if the people want to amend to a conversion, and I think the identity is an issue of fact. The identity is an issue of fact for a jury to figure out. It's not an issue for me to decide today. I'm not binding over on a larceny from a person, though. That's not what this is. Not from Mr. Trent, or not from Mr. Jones. I apologize, Mr. Jones. But if the people want to amend to a conversion charge, what's the conversion? What's the years on a conversion?
I don't know off the top of my head, Judge. Again, I would have to look that up really quickly.
Yeah, Ms. Gillis?
Your Honor, it would be larceny by conversion 200 to 1,000, which is a 1-year misdemeanor.
Yeah, so it's a misdemeanor. I mean, it's not a larceny. It's not a felony. It's not a larceny from a person. Not under these. I mean, not under these facts and circumstances. Not from Mr. Jones's testimony as he's testified today. At least there's no probable cause of any intent. Especially if he had been the driver, then yes. If he had not tried to pay him, then maybe. But not when he's trying to pay him and the driver, and there's no testimony that that he looked at the driver or anything, any other kind of thing and said, "Oh, drive away now," or whatever.
Right.
I'll allow you to add the misdemeanor count of larceny by conversion, 200 to 1,000. But Mr. Humphreys probably doesn't stay on this case then, and it becomes a misdemeanor on the misdemeanor docket, and Mr. Ramos will be assigned one of our MIDCs. Mr. Humphreys, is that?
That would be correct, Your Honor. I would basically, I would object to doing the amendment at this point. I think that the court should rule on the felony in terms of saying that there is no binding, it won't be bound over because probable cause has not been established. Then if the prosecution wishes to go do something else, then that's up to them.
Yeah, I actually don't disagree with Mr. Humphreys, mainly because the people aren't even, you don't have the PAC codes, you're not ready on this today. You can refile it as the misdemeanor that it should have been.
I understand, Judge.
All right, and Mr. Jones, I'm going to go